Let me get on with the show, guys. Grids.fun, you can make your own. I posted this. Some of you have already seen this. Some of you actually responded to some of these already. But I figured I would go through each one, talk about each one, have a discussion. You know, if you guys have any disagreements, or if you have any questions about any of these, you know, feel free. That's kind of the whole point of this. But I kind of just want to talk about each one. But, you know, I've talked about some of my favorite games on stream sometimes. Some of these you may know where I come from on these, but you know, we'll just go through it. I figured it'd be fun, be a fun thing, so I can actually use my channel again. And here's my list. You see it right here. Let's start with the favorite game, Mother 3. If you've been following me for a while, I've played Mother 3 on stream from beginning to end. This was back when I was still streaming in the living room. Now I'm in my own little office area with my computer back here, and I do most if not all of my streaming back here, actually. Yeah, I know, it's amazing. But Mother 3, it's always held a important place in my heart in terms of RPGs. Let's talk about the game a little bit. It's the third game of a series of games that came out in Japan. In America, we got Earthbound. Earthbound was Mother 2. That officially came out. Then eventually the very first Mother game, which did not initially release in America, but eventually would be released on Virtual Console as Earthbound 0. So we did eventually in America get a version of the first one, but we have not officially gotten a version of Mother 3, the third game in the series in America. It took translation efforts of Tomato. That's what he goes by. He's a Japanese the English translator, and he's a huge friggin' Mother fan and Earthbound fan. Him and a bunch of other people worked together to do the assembly hacking required to get into the GBA script. They did a lot of work behind the scenes to make English text fit on the cart. Not only did they translate it, they actually localized it lightly, which was pretty cool. And the game came out eventually. It came out, I think it was originally patched in, I think the release date was October in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check. Mother 3 release date. Pretty sure it was 2006. In October. Okay, so April 2006 was the Japanese one, and then I think the English translation came out in October of 2008. Yes, the day after my birthday, actually, which is kind of interesting because 2008 was the same year that I took a road trip with some friends from college from the state of Georgia all the way to the heart of Texas. And for my birthday, I convinced them to say, hey, let's do a road trip. One of my friends said, hey, well, my parents live in Texas. So we drove from Georgia to Texas. It was the longest drive. And we did it. And it was right around my birthday. My birthday is October 16th. So the day after, we got the English translation. And that was like the best birthday present I'd ever gotten. I was like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this forever. I've wanted to play this game for years and years and years. And it was better than I could ever imagine. Now, keep in mind, I played Earthbound when I was young. It's one of those nostalgic titles for me. I don't think Earthbound is the greatest RPG ever. I thought it was a really good one because it was interesting and did things differently. Clearly, many other RPGs have superseded it. And in order to play Mother 3 and appreciate Mother 3, you have to at least have played Mother 2, aka Earthbound. Those two games are linked inextricably. Like, there's no way that you could play one and not. If you played 3 by itself, I'm sure you would enjoy it if you enjoy JRPGs. And the English translation is really good. The guys who did the localization, the fans, took very great pains to be accurate to the game in terms of like the existing materials and everything else. However, you've got to play Mother 2 in order to fully appreciate Mother 3. And that's a hard ask because, like most JRPGs, this is my opinion as an old 40-year-old man plus, there's not a whole lot of time to play those types of games anymore. You know, you might even say that they don't respect the player's time, which is why it's so funny to me whenever there's new re-releases of RPGs of these from the old times where they get like quote-unquote quality of life things that like increase the experience gain or you can fast forward or whatever, right? And that's just the reality of life now, unfortunately. If you're a younger guy, maybe you can appreciate it and actually play it through. Mother 3, on the other hand, I feel like it's better paced. The story unravels completely differently from Earthbound, for sure. And I'm not gonna spoil anything, but the fact of the matter is, like, the story really touched me. The connection to my youth was heavy, and it felt like a chapter was finally closed in my life, you know, at the time of the period. The game itself is actually really well made. The battle system is really engaging. It has a rhythm element to it. You know, you can see the fourth game on my list is a Beatmania title. We'll get to it because Lux actually typed in Beatman 1A. So rhythm games have always been like a pretty big part of my life too, and I'll explain that as I get to it. But that whole like aspect of putting music in the game is important to me just in general, but it was really cool when I discovered that's how the battles worked in Mother 3. And some of the harder bosses and things had some really unusual rhythms and things that you had to figure out. That was part of the challenge, and that also spoke to me, like on a you know, it's a basic thing. It seems like a simple thing, and if you look at it on paper, yeah, it's kind of a simple concept, but the fact that you tie into it, you're not just sitting there tapping A over and over again to make a menu pass. You actually have to be actively engaged to maximize your damage, and it's actually required in a lot of later fights, because if you don't do maximum damage, you're going to get your butt torn open by some of those bosses, even if you're at the level that you're supposed to be at. So the story is great. It wraps up. It's about family, you know. It's about family. It really is, actually. It wasn't afraid to pull its punches. It didn't pull any punches in terms of like what happens in the story. Some pretty sad things happen in there. It left a mark, and like I said, I played through the whole game front to back. The VOD's on YouTube. It's on my Cyber YouTube. If you actually want to sit there and watch through my entire playthrough, feel free. I think I saved most of the VOD. I may have dropped some signals back then because, you know, Twitch and its network servers kind of suck, but you know, hey, that's what's up. Now, what I'm going to do here, runner-ups. Obviously, you see the games as they're listed, and you may have said, well, why didn't you pick some other game as your favorite game? Or why didn't you pick some other game as this or that? For a couple of these, I'm going to talk about some runner-ups. I could have very easily put Chrono Trigger on my favorite game. I could have also very easily put Beatmania as my favorite game. However, the reason why I chose Mother 3 in particular is because I feel like even though I may have spent more time on those other games playing them, Beatmania in particular, yeah, a lot more. I don't play them as much nearly anymore, and I don't feel like the impact in terms of the game itself was as strong as those other games. So I think I feel comfortable putting Mother 3 as my favorite game, and I've talked about it on stream before, and you know, the fact that I played through it again on stream should probably tell you how much I like it, because I don't normally replay games. I usually play them once, maybe twice, to experience them. I used to be a lot more achievement brained, and I used to care about getting all the achievements in a game. I realized I don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. I just gotta play the game and get to the end. So I always appreciate a good game that has a good story, that has a good beginning, middle, and end, that holds your hand and shows you a cool experience from the front to the back. And when you're done, you're done. You don't have to come back to it. It's like reading a good book. You know, you can read the book from cover to cover and say, okay, I'm satisfied. I prefer games that are built that way. And Mother 3 is like for me, it's one of the best examples of that type of structure. You know, but it has the added benefit of like, oh yeah, there's tiebacks to when I was younger, when I played Earthbound. So Mother 3, that's how I feel about it. Very cool. All right, next game, best story. Now you might be saying, I just gave all this praise to Mother 3. Why do you think Phoenix Wright has the best story? What? What's wrong with you? I first played Phoenix Wright on the Nintendo DS port. In Japan, it came out on the Game Boy Advance. And the objection, yeah, right. But so Phoenix Wright, you know, odd choice. I mentioned this before, and some people, aka Vector, thought this was a very weird thing because, like, I never talk about it. And what do you mean? I've never heard of you bring this up. Listen, I'm not an open book, okay? Right now I'm sharing, but just because you don't know all the games I've played doesn't mean you know me. It doesn't mean you know me. You can't know me by my games. You only know a facet of me. I contain multitudes. Anyway, Phoenix Wright. What's up with Phoenix Wright? I played Phoenix Wright on the Nintendo DS. Nintendo DS, they had multiple stories on it, and then eventually they released part 2 and part 3. I like Phoenix Wright 1 through 3. Like really like it as a story. Because it's like, now the actual characters and everything else, okay. You know, you could say it's a little cheesy. Capcom wrote these really goofy characters over the top. Of course, you could argue this is not how court actually works. They talk about that in the games. They establish why court works the way it does in universe. They say, you know, in the future, in the Tokyo or whatever made up place they made up in the game on the American version, court cases have to be decided within 3 days. If you can't come to like an actual amicable resolution, the person is automatically marked guilty, right? Like there's actually there's a story justification for the reason why these court cases happen so quickly, because they're trying to get speedy justice for everybody. I don't know. Maybe in the future this will actually happen in Japan. Maybe this is already happening in Japan. Who knows? I don't know. I haven't lived in Japan. If you lived in Japan, tell me. But anyway, the game is basically a visual novel. You know, but you've got search. You talk to characters, you learn clues, you search crime scenes, you are supposed to intuit why certain things happen. Some people could argue that the actual gameplay is not really all that revolutionary, I guess. But what really sold Phoenix Wright as a concept was the characters, and the objection thing was very memeable. Obviously, people meme it even to this day. And the characters are, you know, they're memorable, right? Capcom does have a pretty decent writing staff. The people who worked on this game, you know, they were able to take a concept like court and make it interesting, right? But what was really cool about this story is that they wrote a perfect bow. They wrapped, it was a circle. Without getting into too many details, the story from the beginning was planned. It honestly feels like from the beginning, the story was planned to end where it did on part 3, which is insane because there's not that many stories with sequels that actually cleanly loop like that. There are certain things that happened in the first game that get revisited in a very logical and consistent way by the time you get to the end. It was an extreme, for me, it was an extremely satisfying story arc, which is a shame. Because they kept making Phoenix Wright games. Had they stopped making Phoenix Wright games after the third one, after the original trilogy, I would have been satisfied. But for whatever reason, probably money, Capcom said, we need to make a fourth one. And they made a fourth one. And then they made a fifth one. And then they made a side game where you play as Miles Edgeworth, where you're the prosecutor as opposed to the defendant. And then they made a second Miles Edgeworth. And then they made one in Tokyo. And then they made one in feudal Japan. And then they made one in Britain. So they really lost the plot. They lost the plot. No, what's interesting though is that it took several years to get to that point. Yeah, they made one with Professor Layton. Thank you for reminding me. Anyway, my point is, it was an incredibly satisfying story arc for me. It was very well written. It was obviously planned out from the beginning. The characters they introduced at the end, where you're like, who is this guy, actually had a lore reason to be there. He caused something to happen in the very beginning. It was nuts. It was nuts. The revelations that occurred were off the charts. I was very happy with it. I cannot think off the top of my head a game. I don't typically play games for story. Okay, so let me just put that on there. I've actually talked about this. I think Vector asked me at one point, you know, what do you value in video games? I value performance. I want my games to have high frame rates. I want my games to feel and look snappy, okay? Which is probably why I'm such a Dreamcast fiend. I value replayability. You know, if a game is fun to play, I want to be able to come back to it maybe later and try it again. And I want it to be just as cool and just as good the first time that I played it. I like arcade aesthetics, quick jump in and jump out games. I like games with succinct stories, like I was mentioning earlier on Mother 3. Great beginning, middle, and end. I gravitate towards those types of games. A lot of indie games, because they're lower budgeted, have those types of qualities, which is why I've been such a proponent for independent gaming. when I say replayability, I'm talking about story games. So PSU Let Me brought up a good point. Replayability, but you don't replay games except maybe once. So I'm talking about story games. I'm talking about games that have like, if I read a book, I'm gonna read it once, right? But Beatmania 2DX, which I'm about to get to in a little bit, I can play that a lot, and it doesn't necessarily request that much time for me. I can hop in and hop out. That's what I'm talking about. Which is why I was about to say like arcade sensibilities. That's the type of game where it's like, okay, I can hop in and hop out, and I can feel like I've actually gotten a pretty good session. I like it. It's great. I can move on with my day. I don't have to sit there and, you know, wow it up or Final Fantasy 14 online my life away. You know what I'm saying? This is the biggest reason why I stay away from MMOs. I recognize that MMOs are some of the most influential games and have some of the highest player bases, but my God, I cannot. If I start playing those, I'm dead. You'll never see me again. I can't play an MMO. I know myself enough to know that if I'm legitimately hooked to your game, you will never see me again. I don't want to do that. So I stay away from that, just as a matter of like health and self whatchamacallit, not self-serving, but like maintaining my life. I don't know the phrase I'm looking for. If I think of it, I'll say it. But anyway, so yeah, best story. I honestly, like, you could probably argue that there's some good RPGs out there that have good stories and things, but that's not really what I go to gaming for necessarily. You know, if it has a good story, great, fantastic, you know, but that's not what I'm looking for at first glance. Mother 3 is cool. Mother 3 is beyond that. And some of these other games in here, you know, you could argue, let's see, what games? You know, Metal Gear Solid 3, obviously, it has a lot of cutscenes, because guess who made it? There's a lot of story there. And a lot of lore. I'm gonna get to that. In a bit, but anyway, Phoenix Wright, I think, still stands the test of like, yeah, this is cool. Parts 1, 2, and 3, fantastic games, and they work together so well as a cohesive unit. You know, it's the story, it's the beginning, middle, end concept, but spread over 3 games. So favorite art style. I thought about this for a while. There are several very interesting looking arty style games. You know, one that almost got put on this list for favorite art style was Rez, for obvious reasons, right? The Kandinsky look, the synesthesia concept, really cool. You know, VR hacker aesthetic, the whole backstory, and by extension, Child of Eden, same kind of thing. Tetsuya Mizuguchi, he knows what he's doing in terms of like really selling the idea, the concept of music and graphics at the same time. Awesome stuff, right? But I feel like in terms of like what I like in the art has to extend also to like the box art and the presentation and the character art and everything else. And Jet Set Radio, it often gets cited in like one of the quote unquote first cell shaded 3D games or whatever in history. I don't think it was the first cell shaded game. You could argue that Fear Effect was probably first, and also around the time that the Dreamcast came out, there was that Wacky Racers game that was also technically cell shaded. But I feel like Jet Set Radio really put the concept of cell shading on the map. Now, obviously, clearly, there have been better cel-shaded games after Jet Set Radio, including Jet Set Radio Future. But I think in terms of like when I think of cel shading and I think of a cohesive look, I think of Jet Set Radio. You know, Jet Grind Radio if you were born in America. If you want to hear what I talked about Phoenix Wright, you got to rewind the VOD, Durf. I'm sorry. You missed it, man. Also, welcome in. I have to argue against Fear Effect being the first because the character lighting is pre-baked. Yeah. I mean, and there's arguments, right? There's arguments to it, and I could maybe accept that, but you're right. Yes, it's pre-baked textures with lights on the textures, and it kind of achieves the look, but it's not quite real time like how Jet Set Radio was. That's what I think of. Now, some people would say like art style. Okay, well, what's a game that has a really cool art style outside of that? I already mentioned Rez. I already mentioned Child of Eden. Another good one that my friend brought up in Discord. He mentioned the artwork for What did he say? Actually, I have it here. Let me open it up. He made a pretty good argument. Oh yeah, also the graffiti. I made some of my own notebook graffiti. I was inspired to make my own notebook graffiti as a kid with Jet Set Radio. So, and I'm sure some of y'all have done that before, sketched out stuff in books and things. A friend of mine chose Final Fantasy II NES as his favorite art style. Now, obviously, he wasn't talking about the game. He was talking about the character art. I thought that was a pretty cool idea, but that's not enough, right? It's got to extend to the game itself. And so that's why I didn't necessarily pick that as a, you know, or a game like that. Even though it had a really cool Yoshitaka Amano artwork, it's not necessarily something that is the whole picture, you know, because the boxes vary from region to region, right? The artwork can be different from region to region. But when you're looking at the game and the concept and the package and the whole thing as it is presented, I think Jet Set Radio is closer to the ideal that I was trying to do in terms of like choosing something, right? Well, if the models in Fair Effect were cel shaded beforehand, then I guess that counts, as long as it's not hand painted. Yeah, you know, that's the thing. Maybe they did like a render or something, and then they put the resulting texture baked in. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe you can look it up. All right, fourth game, biggest personal impact. I wanted to choose a music game here because, as I was saying at the start of this, I spent 20 years of my life, 20 plus years of my life playing music games. Hey, what's up, Perfect Sword? We're on the fourth game. We're on the biggest personal impact. Welcome in, man. I kind of talked at the top of the stream, and then I lost a bunch of signal. So far so good. I'm knocking on wood that the Twitch doesn't crap out again. But yeah, I'm going over this About Me video games thing. If you want to make your own, go to grids.fun. But yes, rhythm gaming basically defined like 2 decades of my life. 2 decades. Easily. I've met a lot of my best friends that I still talk to today through music games. Beatmania IIDX is by far the game I played the most. I like DDR. I play DDR. I actually own a DDR cabinet in my garage. I like Guitar Freaks. Guitar Freaks was the Konami-made guitar game. Played that a lot. Poppin' music, I'm there. I played all these music games, but I would have to say that Beatmania and Beatmania IIDX were the games that I played the most in the arcades and at home. You know, I own arcade style controllers. You've seen me play Beatmania on stream before. I think I did a PS2 emulation stream for kicks and giggles. It's not the best way to play Beatmania at home, let's be honest, but I was able to show off the game, and I thought it was fun. But yeah, I've moderated several websites. I've been an admin on a couple of other music-based related game sites. I know people. I've made connections from all over the internet because of that. I've used my same username in all these places, so if you search my username online, you'll probably find me in a lot of spots. It's probably me in most cases. But yeah, 2DX, I can't, in terms of like as a game, and also what it's done for my life in terms of social, like the people I've met, the conversations I've been able to strike up, the connections I've made. It's all thanks to music games, like a big chunk. And it's ironic because I don't really play music games a whole lot anymore. I'm old now. It's harder to do. I get tired easier. The arcades have had more music games now than ever, which is fantastic because there were several years there where it wasn't clear if Konami music games were going to keep coming out in America, or let alone in Japan. There was a scare there, and the fans is what kept it alive. Nowadays, you've got all sorts of fan-based music games, and you still have Konami consistently making release after release, which is great. It's fantastic. I mean, it's never been a better time to get into music games, including with Beatmania. If you have a round one arcade near you, or at least within 2 hours, and you've never been, I highly recommend you go, because they got all sorts of great games, and they always have the newest versions of the Beatmania/Konami music games that you can play. Beatmania 2DX included, almost guaranteed. Not really much more to say than that. I mean, if you know me, then you know I like music games. It's just how it is. All right, best combat. Now, best combat. You could take this to be, what is the best combat system in a video game? Some of the runner-ups that I've considered before this were like the DMC series of games. They have some of the most interesting engaging combat systems. I almost, you see the column that says Overhated, Final Fantasy 13. I thought the battle system in Final Fantasy 13 was pretty good too, in terms of like the gambits and setting. Well, not gambits was 12, but in terms of setting up the different whatchamacallit, the I forget what they call them, but it's like the different categories of attacks. You can actually switch them up, and you'll get different types of powers based on them, and then you can also control your character and set and put in commands. It actually paradigms. Thank you, Vector. I couldn't think of the word. I've got COVID brain, and I'm being serious. I'm not actually making that up. My recall is a lot worse than it used to be. The paradigm system was really interesting to me at the time, and I spent a lot of time on that game. But ultimately, I felt like all the other categories in this list didn't really touch upon fighting games, and I decided, okay, best combat naturally out of everything that's listed here probably should be a fighting game. So I chose JoJo's Bizarre Adventure: Heritage for the Future. I've said it before. This is my absolute favorite fighting game of all time. It was Capcom made. It covers mainly the majority of the third arc of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is to say, you know, Jotaro and all his friends, and the introduction of stands. I like aesthetically. Capcom went all out, capturing all of the details from the manga in terms of the character animations, their posing, their portraits, their moves. I would say easily 98% of that game is direct source material from the manga, which is insane. And I didn't know that when I first started playing, but when I went back a few years later to read the manga series, it was so obvious. It was so obvious just how much Capcom directly pulled from the manga to animate and do everything in it. All the attacks, the names of all the attacks are quotes from the manga. The things that pop up on the screen, they're panels straight from the comics. All the characters, it's now there's a couple of, I say 98% because there's a couple of things that they did in the game. There's one character in there that they had to design from the ground up, because in the manga, they never actually showed what she looked like. In the manga, they showed her stand, but she never had a built character. So Araki actually helped Capcom design a character to look like the stand user for the game. So that's her canon look. But all the other attacks and everything else were based from the manga. The crew in the manga, the crew fought this person without actually ever seeing what she looked like. You know, they end up discovering her after they beat her, and they do a funny gag where like they have the camera below the characters facing up, and they're all looking down, and they're like, "Wow, we messed her up pretty bad, and let's just keep going." But they never actually showed her. So for this game, they made up a quote unquote brand new character, but really it was a character they never displayed. And then there's Easter eggs for Part 4. In this game, there's certain super moves that are references specifically to Part 4 things that at the time were just happening in Japan, which is also another cool thing. Anyway, my point is, I like it. Now, on top of that, it's a Capcom game made during that era. It's a CPS3 game, so it uses the same engine that Street Fighter Third Strike ran on. So it borrows a lot of the same feel from Third Strike games. But every single character in that game plays a different way. And obviously the stand characters are the strongest characters. If you look at any tier list, you'll see that all the stand characters are near the top, and all the characters that don't have stands are kind of near the bottom. I get it. It's broken kind of by design. And there are certain characters that are so far and above better than everyone else in the game. Again, I suspect it's by design. However, it doesn't matter because the game is still incredibly fun to play. I feel like the mechanics are not superly overcomplicated. If you put time into it, the game is very rewarding. It has a lot of style. It has a lot of flair. So if you've never played it before, I highly recommend you play it. Vector mentioned that it's on Fightcade, so try it out. Oh, you got to go back to work? All right, man. See you later. Really good game. So play it if you haven't. Okay, Overhated. I feel pretty strongly that DMC has like a pretty interesting combat system, but I wanted to choose a fighting game, so I settled on JoJo. Overhated. I immediately picked 13. No, well, kinda. I think DMC 3 was really good. I really enjoyed DMC 1, but I think DMC 1 had a lot of work to do before it became, you know, better. But I feel like, I don't know, three was better. 3 was better. Dante's Awakening, I think, was far and above better than all the other games, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I feel like 3 was probably peak DMC in terms of like gameplay and you know, because it had Virgil in it, jackpot with the freaking. If you know, you know. I don't want to get too far into it because it's just a side game. It's a side game that's not on my list, right? Where I'm at. Okay, Overhated. The reasons to hate FF13 are numerous. When it first came out, people called it Final Hallway because all the stages were super linear. There wasn't really an open world. There was technically an open world, but it wasn't really an open world, and you didn't really see it till like the very last 20% of the game. The story was kind of nonsensical a little bit. Falchi, crystals, but like you turn into crystals, but like, are you a person or are you a spirit? Why is the space pope here? You're fighting a baby at the end? What the heck's going on here? I feel like it was very flashy to a fault, but like I was trying to say earlier, the battle system was really engaging. Paradigm shifts and things like that were really cool. It kept you engaged while you were fighting, which is like, that's what you're mostly doing. And in terms of like, I liked some of the characters on there. I actually did enjoy some of the characters. Some of them were, you know, it's the typical stuff that you see from Japanese made games sometimes. But, you know, Saz wasn't, yes, he was a stereotype with an afro and everything else, but he wasn't as bad as some other stereotypes I've seen in other games. And he had his own story. He had a kid and everything. Lightning, I feel like Lightning was a what's that term? A Mary Sue? Is that what they call him? Like when like the super powerful woman. Is that the term that they use? But the other characters around them were cool. So Barrett's, yeah. I mean, I guess, but we all know about Barrett, right? You can look at you've talked about this before. These tropes of Mary Sue's a self-insert. Yeah. Or I'm sorry, underrated. Underrated. Interesting title, right? Shenmue 2. Why underrated? I think Shenmue 2 was, out of all three of the Shenmue games, I think it's the best one. I think most Shenmue fans might think that as well. I don't know if PSU Love Me is still in the chat. I feel like maybe he might agree with me. I think Shenmue 2 is underrated because the Shenmue series in general seems to get overlooked nowadays by all of the other open world games. Now, all of the praise, the first one had forklift racing, yes. Technically speaking, Shenmue 3 had also some forklift stuff that you could do, like a forklift job. Shenmue 2 had other things you could do for work. But I think Shenmue 2, I'm choosing Shenmue 2 as the poster child for the Shenmue series, but I think Shenmue 2 is the best of all of them, despite the ending. If you played on the original Dreamcast, there's 4 discs for Shenmue 2. Every disc had a different main portion of the game. The last disc was essentially just a walk through the woods with the character Shenhua, and you're chasing after her and talking to her about different things and things. Yeah, some people like it because, you know, it's the denouement. It's like the last bit before the ending, right? Before they say the title of the game in the game, which is pretty true actually, if you think about it. But no, I think like, yeah, there's so many other open world games, and like I was saying earlier, why underrated? I think just succinctly, other games have come out and obviously get more attention. There's no shortage of open world games nowadays, up to and including Breath of the Wild. But even before then, you've got games like all the Yakuza series, which is like way more directly in competition. You've got Grand Theft Auto, you know, and some of these game studios and games have directly said that Shenmue inspired them to make these bigger games, which is great. But I feel like a lot of the respect and a lot of the luster has been lost. And Shenmue is like super catering to a very specific group of gamers. I'm not going to call them niche gamers necessarily, but it does kind of feel that way sometimes. And I feel like, yeah, man, us people who have been playing Shenmue from the beginning, we kind of want to see the ending of the story. It's not going to happen. I hate to be such a negative Nancy. It's just not. It's not going to happen. But it would be nice if it did. And I think that's, if it's underrated in the hearts of the people that were developing the game, then what hope do we fans have? And that's kind of why I'm saying this game is severely underrated. There's a lot of potential there. It ain't the best game. I'm not gonna say it's the best game ever made. But man, it would be great if we could see if it would be great if other people, if the average gamer believed in it as much as people like me and PSU Love Me do, right? And if Shenmue 1 freaked out and said, this might be the game ever. This for Shenmue 2, I said, this is the greatest. Yes, I agree. I agree with you. And that's why PSU Love Me is the world record holder of various Shenmue categories. And he's the GOAT. He knows what's up. He knows ball. And see, Vector is the exact opposite of that gamer. That gaming spirit, classic gamer style. I'm not trying to be too hard on Vector, but I feel like yeah, it's not Vector. I'm kind of unfairly pointing him out, but there are other people who feel that way, and it's just like it's a shame. That's all I'm gonna say. Overrated. I think it should be pretty obvious why I picked this, right? Do I have to explain why I picked Ocarina of Time as the most overrated game of all time? I mean, there's the literal definition of overrated, where so many people rate it highly. But then there's also like the concept of like, why are you rating a game like this so highly, right? I'm not gonna say it's a bad game. I don't think it's a bad game. I'm not even gonna go, no, Super Mario 64 didn't age well. Flute looks too weird. See, Vector gets it. On Metacritic right now, it is currently the highest rated game. That has not happened since this game has come out. Do you understand the point I'm trying to make here? I've never seen a game receive such universal praise. And to the point where it's like, I think that I could play this game forever. Now, Super Mario 64 caters to a very different type of gamer. I would say that Super Mario 64, by definition, has not aged well because of the camera control and everything else. I will say Ocarina of Time tried to fix the camera problems with the Z targeting and everything else. That's not what makes it interesting. I think what made it interesting was the fact that it was in 3D, the allure of the 3D display. It was a very traditional Zelda story. Some people think it's the perfect game, maybe because the exploration was very, I don't know, well thought out. You could ride a horse on it. There's different reasons that you could come to that conclusion, but I don't understand how a game like this could be so universally highly rated. And I think that by definition, that means that it is overrated. Because there's no other examples of that. There's no, in gaming, that is such a rarity. That is such a ridiculously high bar. I don't even have to say bad things about the game. I'm just stating a fact. I'm stating a fact. The game is literally overrated. Anyway, I'm not going to belabor the point too much. I like, my preference personally is 2D Zelda games. I like the top-down Zelda games. I like the 2D Zelda games. Those games are really cool. For me, and obviously Link's Awakening is probably my favorite 2D Zelda. Some people like A Link to the Past, some people like other games. It's whatever, it's cool. But no, I don't see it. I don't see how Ocarina of Time merits that much response. Okay, we're moving on. Needs a remake. Burning Rangers. The only reason why I'm bringing this up now, other games need a remake. I'm not going to say that Chrono Trigger needs a remake, but if they made a remake of Chrono Trigger and they did it with the 2D HD engine, I would not say no. In fact, I'm kind of expecting them to do that. They've hinted that they might do that. There are several old school JRPGs that have gotten remakes from Square, and they came out really cool on the other side. The best example, obviously, is Live Alive. I played most of that on stream. Pretty cool game. The old game was an SNES game. They remade it in 2D HD. They kind of rebuilt it. Fantastic. But the only reason why I'm bringing up Burning Rangers is I'm going to admit there's a little bit of recency bias. Watching both Yusuf and Vector play the game again made me realize, man, that game had a lot of cool ideas and potential, but it was so handicapped by the hardware it was on. That game barely ran, and there was a lot of cool concepts that they could have broached and done, and I'm surprised that Sonic Team never revisited that idea or tried to make it better. Tried to make it more streamlined, took the concept. They didn't do anything with it. So I think that if they could make a decent Burning Rangers one, I would play it for sure. Absolutely, I would play it. Is it the most worthy game that needs a remake? I don't know. Probably not. There's probably other games that need to be remade, but I would prefer that over like another Resident Evil remake, like RE5 remake. Come on now. We didn't need a remake of 4, in my opinion. I enjoyed 4 remake. I mean, it was okay, but we didn't need another remake of that. Anyway, that's my spiel. I'm sticking to it. It looks 1,000% better on an emulator with resolution. I'm sure it does. Yes, You Let Me says, I grew up with Zelda 1 and 2. Hadn't played Link to the Past when Ocarina of Time came out, but you really liked it. Yeah, and I think, honestly, I think most people felt that kind of way too. If I'm going to be honest, BS You Let Me, I think most people... The allure of 3D was too strong. Nintendo really was first out the gate with that wholly consumer reaching 3D console. You know, there were other 3D games at that time. There were also other 3D consoles capable of 3D that came out around the same time as or before the 64. So the 64 was kind of like one of those mass market, like, we sold the idea of 3D. Nintendo kind of did it in terms of marketing. They probably did it the best, which is why they sold so many. Now, they didn't always win. You know, PS2 clearly dominated the market in the years to come. And GameCube barely sold any. But you know, that's neither here nor there. I don't want to rehash the I don't want to rehash the console wars. All right, criminally overlooked. Beyond Oasis was a game that I discovered entirely by accident. If you want to use the sound effect in chat, feel free. You know the ones. I played through Beyond Oasis on stream, and I also played through its sequel on the Sega Saturn. Everything on that run should be shifted to the right. You think Beyond Oasis needs a remake? You think Burning Rangers was overrated? Oh, shifted to the right? Hold on, wait. I don't follow what you're saying. So you're saying that Shenmue II is underrated, and that Ocarina of Time needs a remake? And that... what are you saying? Superman 64 definitely needed a remake. Okay, so Beyond Oasis is the Zelda-like that came out on Sega that was made by Yuzo Koshiro's company Ancient. Yuzo Koshiro actually reused a lot of the same sound effects he used in Streets of Rage in this game, which is actually kind of funny. He also wrote the soundtrack. He worked on this game with his sister. It's got some Streets of Rage type beat 'em up feel, but it's an RPG, and it plays kind of like a top-down Zelda. I did not know about this game when it came out. My friend happened to own a copy of it, and then he let me borrow it, and I played. That's how I played it for the first time. It was really great. I enjoyed it a lot. I've played it on stream before. I've talked about it before. If you haven't checked out Beyond Oasis, please do. It's called Story of Thor in Japan. I'm not entirely sure why. That's just what they called it. You can knock yourself out and have a good time. So let's go on. Okay, I see what you mean now, Vector.
Why you have to be mad? It's only a game.
All right, favorite protag. I struggled with selecting favorite protagonist. I think what I'll do is I'll start with what is there lightning? No, I don't think so. I think runner-ups on favorite protagonist. I will get to why I chose Naked Snake, but in terms of like the favorite protags that could have been options, I like games that have characters with a ridiculous amount of personality, or characters that tell like silly jokes or things that otherwise are entertaining to me, things that make me laugh. So you could think, I'm not necessarily saying that these are examples of that, but like think of like a Travis Touchdown or a Leon Kennedy, right? I don't necessarily like them as characters, but when they are characterized in such an entertaining way, like such a silly or entertaining or memorable way, I tend to like that in a protag. But I wanted to take this more of this category more seriously in terms of like, okay, what protagonist has the most humanity to them, I guess would be a way to say it. You know, some people would even say Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII is their favorite protag. I don't know how, because Cloud is kind of like, you know, he's kind of a bummer most of the time. Some people would even argue that he's like, oh, he's mysterious, you know, he's a cool dude, he's got the cool hair or whatever. But I chose Naked Snake for a couple of reasons. You know, and you could arguably he was the start of all the snakes that came after him. He still had a lot of the same wisecracky elements of that character that were sort of put into future ones, future snakes, future snake iterations. He had to deal with a lot in terms of, as a character, he had to make a lot of choices. You know, he had to take out his mentor. He had a rival that he often fought multiple times, and he actually had like an actual love interest, which is kind of nuts, because that, you know, that seems kind of, especially considering what happened to his ball sack due to radiation and everything else. But I feel like in that sense, he had a lot of dimensionality to him. Like he felt like he had more sides to him than just like, I'm a man on a mission that needs to get stuff done. You know, he got hurt. He lost his eyes when he was out there. You know, he got betrayed. You can learn a lot about him through codec calls and how he interacts with the people on the codec calls and stuff. So it was kind of a tough choice to settle on this character, but I think out of all the Metal Gear games, I liked 3 the best anyway, and it made sense based on that calculation to pick Snake as the one. But yeah, certainly there could be a lot of other protagonists, but I feel like for me, Snake was the one. What do you mean, Shadow of Colossus? Anyway, am I back? Can you guys hear me? Am I coming through? Shadow Colossus, favorite antagonist. What do you mean, favorite antagonist? Shadow Colossus has Colossi. There's so many Colossuses in there that you have to fight. What you mean? What you talking about? Well, let me explain. And I think that after I explain, it'll probably be obvious the angle that I'm coming at this from. Shadow Colossus is a game where you're a dude, you get plopped in the middle of the world and you say, you gotta save the princess. Something tells you gotta save the princess. You say, okay, I'm gonna do that. And you take out your sword and your sword says, go over there, and you go there. And you find the monster and you say, oh my god, I gotta kill that monster. Let me kill it. This will help me save the princess. I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Turns out she's in a different... No, actually, she stays in the same spot the entire time, but that's besides the point. As an antagonist... Now, you okay, runner-ups, right? What's something that... If somebody in my age group, what would they say? Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. Someone was like, Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. Oh my god, they're so antagonistic. Oh my god, they're such a bad guy. But yes, if you're talking about in terms of like flipping the script, that's it. That's the concept. And the game does it subtly, but effectively. You're doing this thing and you don't really know why you're killing the Colossi. You don't really know. You just know that you have to do it because that's what you were told to do. And it gets so bad that you actually like kill your horse. You are the cause of your horse dying. The one animal that was like actually loyal to you and actually helped you get from place to place. You cause its death. Spoilers, obviously. So I thought it was a very interesting inversion of the concept of who's the antagonist, because it's through your actions you are causing this world not only to fall apart, But you know, at the end, you know, some crazy stuff happens and it turns into a space odyssey a little bit, I guess. The story's a little ambiguous at the end of it, but I think that it's kind of a neat thing. It's like, yeah, by your hand, these things are happening. And so I felt like that was too sweet, too succinct an idea. You know, it's not obvious. Again, it's not super obvious that you're really kind of the bad guy in the story, but yeah, by the end, of course you are, because look at what you did. Look at what your deeds have wrought. And that's kind of, it was a neat, it was a slow burn concept, but it was really cool how they were able to really tell the story without really needing to say a whole lot of words. Like, that was the other thing. The way that it was done so efficiently was a really super interesting concept to me. And it hit me the right way when I played it. I was like, yeah, I see what you're doing. All right, let's move on. Best soundtrack. Man, someone runner up, which is, I felt so bad when I made this list and I was talking to some people about it afterwards and they mentioned the game. This really should have been Sonic CD. It really should have been. But no, I'm going to stick with my guns. Sonic CD has a really strong, most Sega games have super strong soundtracks. I think most people that play Sega games regularly would probably agree that, like, yeah, there's a lot of really, really good Sega games out there that have fantastic soundtracks. But I'm going to tell you why I picked Earthbound. I like the music in Earthbound. I like Hip Tanaka. Hip Tanaka, it did a lot of the, Keiichi Suzuki did a lot of the music in this game, but Hirokazu Tanaka, Hip Tanaka did a lot of the tracks that I like. They're equally credited. If best combat should be a fighting game, best soundtrack should be a rhythm game. Now, that was the other angle I was going to take, Vector. This should have also have been a music game like Beatmania, but I felt like Beatmania felt more at home for me under the biggest personal impact. And here's the other angle is that Beatmania at this point, with the amount of releases it's gotten, we're talking over 50 plus releases, are thousands and thousands of songs. Thousands. Like, no joke, 3,000, almost 4,000 some odd songs. So to call that the best soundtrack just by pure volume alone would be viable, right? But again, I wanted to sort of keep it at a human scale, something that you could actually listen to like in an afternoon if you really wanted to, and listen to the whole soundtrack from start to finish. I was another title that could have been in this best soundtrack, Jet Set Radio, right? I didn't want to repeat titles. I chose to not repeat titles. Jet Set Radio could have easily been the best soundtrack winner on this category, easily, no doubt, right? But ultimately, I decided against it. And so Earthbound, Hip Tanaka is responsible for a lot of the songs I like the best on Earthbound. But ever since I played that game, he did something with musical progressions and how he composed the tracks are very, very memorable. They're earworms. And even now, 20, 30 years later, after I've played those games, I hear the music in my mind. My God, my speaker's so loud. I hear the music in my mind. If I like zone out enough, I'll hear the music in my mind. It's insane. I don't understand how such a basic soundtrack has had such a strong impression on my mind. But Earthbound is definitely it. You know, there are plenty of other games that have fantastic soundtracks. It really is hard to choose because I value music in games too. You know, partially because of my music game connection, but also just because I'm always listening for what composers do with music and what instruments they use and what samples they use. Like, I'm really tuned in on that kind of thing. It's just something that comes to me naturally. So yeah, this could have really been any number of games, if I'm going to be completely honest. But Earthbound, I settled with Earthbound because for me personally, it's got a lot of tunes that like cannot leave my mind. I still think about them today. I'll be randomly like walking down the street and I'll hear one of the battle themes from Earthbound in my head. I don't know why. I can't explain it. It's probably a problem, but you know, it hasn't been a problem yet, so we'll see. I don't know. Okay, let me move on. Halo Reach. There's I struggled on choosing this game. Some people like to say stuff like Mario Kart. I've never been a Mario Kart head. I'm going to be honest with you. I like Mario Kart. I mean, I think it's okay. I don't think it's the best racing game ever, but there are some people who will swear up and down that Mario Kart's like the best game ever conceived. Likewise, games like Smash Brothers often come up a lot. Couch co-op things or online. You know, nowadays most games have to have some kind of multiplayer aspect or else they're not viable games anymore. I'm sure you could think of any number of titles. For me, and Lux can attest to this, Halo Reach is a game that we played a lot. We played a lot on the 360, and what was cool about Reach is that it had the Forge mode in it. It was kind of like a prototypical Minecraft thing. I skipped Minecraft. I never played Minecraft. I could see why kids nowadays like Minecraft. But Lux and I, we were on Reach for years. For years. We were on that game forever. And Reach was probably the game that I played the most of the original Halo games. The original Halo games made by Bungie. Let me clarify. But yeah, man, it's Reach is great. It's fantastic. All right, so yeah, Reach is a game I played a lot, and I think it had a lot of multiplayer potential. And I think people made their own maps, which was really cool because you could use Forge to do that. Bungie supported it for several years. Pretty fantastic. What else? I think that's it. Also, the amount of hours I played, really good. All right, next category. Not usually my thing, but Cyberpunk. I struggled to select this as a concept. And reason being is, what's the type of game that I don't normally seek out to play? But if I did play it, I really enjoyed it. That was kind of like how I approached it. And the type of game that I don't normally seek out and play are the open world games where you're a criminal. Now, you could say GTA fits in that mold. But there's other games that are like, I don't know, like Saints Row would be a good example. Or not Crisis, but like that one game, anything like super open worldy with like lots of things that you can do in terms of like categories of things. Witcher, you're not really a criminal in The Witcher, but it really is like an open world. Like you could choose to be a bad guy and you could choose to be a good guy, but in most cases these games encourage you to do bad stuff, right? And I've really not, up until the release of Cyberpunk, I really wasn't into like anything that CD Projekt Red had ever made. So yeah, Assassin's Creed, I guess, would also be another good example of that type of game. Assassin's Creed has changed a lot over the years in terms of like the types of things you do in those games. But yeah, that might be a good example of a game. But when Cyberpunk came out, the initial marketing was like, okay, I'm interested in this. This looks like something I would be interested in because it's like technological and I like futuristic settings and things like that. But then I started seeing like gameplay. I'm like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I would actually like this. No, the game came out and like I actually put a lot of time into it. Like I think I put over 200 hours into it. I saw multiple endings. So in terms of like what this category is trying to convey, I think this is probably the best that I could come with in terms of what I've actually played. I'm not gonna Elden Ring. I don't like medieval stuff. I've kind of mentioned that in passing before, but Cyberpunk, I think it was like a combination of like right time, right type of game, right type of setting. Conceptually, it's like vibe, and then that was enough to get me into the game systems. And then like, okay, I see what the appeal is now. I understand. And then I ended up playing 100 hours, or a couple hundred hours by the time I was done with it. So, and that's pretty much it. Turn my brain off. This category really is, for me, it's the type of game that I can just hop on and play when I don't know what I want to play, but I just want to play something. And currently, and this is a very important distinction, currently that game is Apex Legends. It's a game that I play, I'm not going to say passively, because you kind of have to pay attention to Apex to really like get good at it. And if you stop playing it for a long time, you will get worse at it. That's just the kind of game it is, because it's a skill-based game. But for me, it's the type of game that's like, yeah, I can hop on, I can play with some friends, I can play by myself. If I have like an hour or something and I don't really want to start like a story-based game, or I'm putting off something on my backlog, I just want to play a game for a little bit and fire off some neurons and get in there. For me, that game currently is Apex. Had I not decided to play Apex, it probably would have been like Fortnite, but I don't like Fortnite, so I did give Fortnite a try and I played a few hours with a friend. It did not jive with me. Apex, however, did, mainly because of its Titanfall DNA, because I played a lot of Titanfall back in the day, Titanfall 1 and to a certain extent Titanfall 2. But yeah, Apex is like that. And this game, the game that's in this category, has changed over the years. I used to call them a ritual game. Destiny was it for a while too, and Lux knows this. Lux knows this very well. We played a lot of that. But that's what it is now. Best with friends. Now, I don't really know if there's a meaningful distinction between best multiplayer and best with friends. I think that most games, if they allow you to play with your friends, it's going to be a more fun experience. It kind of doesn't matter what the game is. If you can play with friends, you can have a fun time, right? But so what I did then instead is I tried to look at it from like, okay, what's a game that I played with a similar group of friends for a very long time and almost always had a good time? And Left 4 Dead 2 and by extension Left 4 Dead 1 were that game. Those were games that, like, yeah, I like playing this with my friends. We actually got to the point where we became more competitive in the versus mode, right? I don't think they ever got like a ranked mode in Left 4 Dead 2, but I would have played Left 4 Dead 2 ranked if they had it. Maybe there's a mod out there that lets you do it. But it was just a game that's just like I played this recently, like a few months ago, with some pals on YouTube, and it's just as fun playing it then as it was, 10 years ago or whatever was the last time I played it regularly, right? So that's kind of why I chose it. I'm sure there's other friend slop games that were specifically meant to be played with friends in like a social setting and that type. I'm sure if you ask some kids that maybe perhaps they might choose I don't know, what's the name of that spaceship game where you're supposed to guess who's Among Us or whatever? Yeah, Among Us. Pokemon, yeah, that's it. Oh, I can't play Pokemon with friends, brother. I tried playing Pokemon when I was younger. I tried doing the whole battle link cable thing with some friends on Pokemon. My God. It was so slow and so boring, and I hated it. It is the worst. But L4D2, yeah, easy. Easy, best for friends, easy clap. No contest. Best retro game. Okay, we have to define what retro means. What I've seen is a commonly agreed upon definition for retro is that any game that's over 20 years old. At this point in the year 2026, 20 years is a lot of game. It's a lot of game, especially for a person who's been gaming since the 90s. So I'm going to stick to my concept of retro, which is like games that I played as a kid. Okay. Now, is Gunstar Heroes the best retro game? No, probably in somebody's list it's going to be Zelda Ocarina of Time, right? But we've already been over that. We've talked about why it's overrated. Gunstar Heroes, though, I think my favorite game, I chose Gunstar Heroes because the developer of the game is my favorite game dev. I think Treasure, the gaming company that made the highest ratio of bangers to slop. I hate saying it like that, but I find the majority of their games, even their stuff that's like licensed stuff that you wouldn't even necessarily pay attention to, as being really good. Their output has been fantastic. Now, not every one of their games are bangers, but there's usually something there in each of their games that's worth visiting. And Gunstar Heroes was the first. Gunstar Heroes was their first original game. It wasn't necessarily the first game of theirs that they released. The first game, technically speaking, the Ronald McDonald Treasureland Adventure came out before Gunstar Heroes, but I chalk that up to one for them and one for us. Are you familiar with that concept? When you're starting a business and you need to make money and you have to build capital, you'll make one for them. You'll make something for the people that are consuming your product, or you'll make something for a company that's paying for your time. And then you'll make one for us. In this case, the one for us was Gunstar Heroes. And that was the ship that set off 1,000. That was the face that set off 1,000 ships, or whatever the expression is. Now, again, I kind of struggle with this one because there's a lot of, we just had the discussion the other day about like, what is the most impactful Mario game, for example. So I personally think Super Mario World was probably the best Mario game. We were talking about Super Mario Brothers 3, which was also kind of like in that same vein. I was like, oh my God, which one's the better Mario game? I think Super Mario World is like Super Mario World was like a perfection of the concepts that were explored in Super Mario Brothers 3. And like, I'm just saying this as an example. I don't necessarily think that they're my best retro game, but it would be easy to see why someone might come to that conclusion. Again, somebody might say Mario 64 was their best retro game. Somebody might even say Banjo-Kazooie was their, if you go down certain things. I can't think of a PlayStation game that someone might say is retro and their best retro game, because I don't consider a lot of the games from that era necessarily retro again, but they're definitely retro, even despite how old I am. I have to stop living in this made up world. But yeah, I think Gunstar Heroes was an easy choice when you put it in the context of like, who is it that made these games? Who is it that made this game? What did they go on to make? Gunstar Heroes was like really cool, arcade based, quick and easy, get in, get out. Sega Genesis. And then by extension, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. I recently played through that PC mod, that really cool widescreen PC mod for that game. That game was tight. I liked it a lot. I like the remake of it. Link's Awakening, go watch my VOD. You'll see why I really enjoyed that game. I kind of talk about different stories about why that game was so nostalgic for me, and why I think it still even holds up today, because of the characters in the game, the characters that were introduced, the different and weird approach that the developers took when making the world and making the characters. I talk a little bit about the history of why it was made. It was made as a side game, off hours when the guys at Nintendo were like not working on their main games. They were working on this. Everything about it is just like really interesting, and it shows in the game. The team wasn't that big, they only had so many people working on the game, but their character and the way that they express themselves and everything actually comes through in the game itself, which is wild because it's a Game Boy game. I'm going to be buying Mina the Hollower after this, because I didn't buy it when I was away because I didn't have access to a computer, but I'm going to do it after this stream. And Mina the Hollower seems to be directly copying the style and aesthetic of Link's Awakening on the Game Boy Color. I'm really looking forward to it. I really liked Shovel Knight when it came out. I bought that. I platinumed it when it first came out. I did everything you could in that game, and I'm excited to do it all over again. We'll see what Mina does differently. I've heard Mina kind of has like a roguelite elements in terms of like modifiers you can put, and I heard it has different endings, and it does a bunch of different stuff. But I'm just in pure like homage to that style of game that is Link's Awakening. I'm looking forward to playing Mina, so hopefully it's a good game. And finally, we're at the end, guys. We made it. We're here. We're at the very last game. The game that I think that everyone should play is the Game Boy Camera. I don't know why this picture has Zelda in the corner. I couldn't tell you why it's there. It's got nothing to do with why I chose this. I think the Game Boy Camera was a monumental piece of technology. Some people retrospectively have said that, yeah, man, the Game Boy Camera was like a portable camera when portable cameras really weren't all that accessible in terms of like cost and everything. Now, yeah, it was like a 2-bit, like black and white, 4-color thing, but it was still amazingly impressive that you were able to put an entire camera system that could save your photos and allow you to print them on a Game Boy, of all things, if you can believe that. But it's not just a camera. Nintendo packed so much in there. They packed a music maker, They packed the ability to make animations. They had all sorts of little mini games and hidden Easter eggs. The entirety of the camera, they could have just made like a basic, like take a couple pictures and you're done type thing. Maybe put some stickers on it, like a picture club, you know, purikura type deal. They did so much more than that, and they didn't have to do that, but they did. It's great. And guess what? Hip Tanaka made some of the music on there. Remember when I was talking about Hip Tanaka earlier? Back with the Earthbound discussion that we were just having not that long ago. So yeah, man, it's tight. Like I really appreciate what the Gameboy Camera does. Now, here's the thing. I think everyone should play it. I don't know how realistic that is, because you need a Game Boy and you need the original hardware. You can't really emulate it. I mean, I think now they figured out a way to like set it up so you can use your webcam on certain emulators. But yeah, it's designed to be something portable and something that you take with you and you take photos with. And it taught you how to take pictures, by the way. Like, it taught you the importance of having enough lighting so that you could see things. And it was an educational tool as much as it was a game, but you didn't know you were being taught. I think that was the coolest thing about it. And it's a shame that kids nowadays won't have that experience. I mean, yeah, okay, sure, there's plenty of like toddler toys that let you use your cameras, and they have, you know, and cameras, they're on cell phones now. It's like, who cares? You can just get a little cheap Print Club app on your phone and take photos and add stickers manually. But what the Game Boy Camera represented at the time was a portable camera that just wasn't that. It was accessible because you could buy it for Game Boy, but it was something new and novel because it wasn't like necessarily peak commonplace. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna exercise? Well, you're in luck because I just finished the list. How appropriate. I just finished the list, Lux. Dude, have you played the PS2 multi-tap, brother? You don't even know the beginning of the multi-tap woes I've had in my life. PS2 used to be like the main console for Beatmania music games, and having to figure out how to multi-tap 2 different guitar controllers and a set of drums on a PlayStation 2, brother, forget it. we did it. We figured it out, but it was not an easy task. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thanks for everybody who come in. Thank you, Vector. Thank you, Lux. Thank you, PSU Love Me. Thank you, Perfect Sword, if you're still in here. Thank you for the homies that are lurking in the chat. You know, if you're in there, I see you. I appreciate you. Thank you for sticking around. Did I miss anybody? I think I saw some other folks in there earlier. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, PSU Love Me. If you want to make one yourself. Oh, thank you, Yusuf. Yusuf dropped in at the beginning of the stream for like a second. Thank you, Durf. Appreciate you, man. But yeah, if you guys want to do this, you know, again, the website, I think it's called grids.fun. They've got a bunch of different categories. Upload them onto your social media and tag me, like, you know, or just ping me or whatever. I want to see what you guys think in your categories. And if you want to do one of the other categories, like movies, or I think they have movies, they have books, they have a bunch of different things you can do. Characters that you like. In my list, I tried to stick to a unique game for each category. You don't necessarily have to do that though. Some people chose the same game for multiple categories, but I wanted to show off as many games as possible. So take care. Thank you for hanging out. Appreciate y'all. I will catch you on the flip side, and maybe next time I'll actually play a game. Who knows? It won't be today though. Adios, amigos.